Okay, we're doing this Frog Factor podcast. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I'll give everybody a minute, see if people want to jump in here. This is my solo debut. Just kind of wanted to go live after the football game and chat with you guys and get some reaction after a 48-14 win for the TCU Horned Frogs over North Carolina. They are 1-0 on the season. Josh Hoover looked great. Kavorian Barnes looked fantastic. The defense after that first football drive were incredible. You know, North Carolina went right down the field, scored on them, but then they bounced back really nicely afterward. And honestly, aside from Max Johnson coming in the game after Gio Lopez got injured and Devin Deal had a scoop and score off his fumble, Max Johnson comes in, leads a nice drive, had another one going before TCU was able to force a fumble and get the ball back. But besides those two drives, Andy Avalos and his defense made a statement. And I think that's the big thing I want to focus on as we get going here. TCU made a statement tonight. That's the most fun I've had watching this team since they beat Michigan. Am I alone in that? I mean, I feel like it's really not even close. I mean, they went 5-7 a few years back. Last year they finished the season strong, but that's the most fun I've had watching this team since the playoff win against the Michigan Wolverines. I was just so excited to see them thrive in that environment and really take North Carolina to the woodshed. And Sonny Dykes was talking with Holly Rowe after the game, and he said, you know what? We felt disrespected. There was a lot of talk about this game and, you know, season opener and Bill Belichick. I'm really glad they could take a break from the 2-hour Bill Belichick pregame show to play a football game. Like, did you watch the pregame coverage? It was just, I mean, I get it. Like, he's an amazing coach and he did incredible things in New England and he comes to North Carolina. It's a big deal. But my goodness, like the entire pregame show, with the exception of a segment that Nick Saban did talking about Josh Hoover and making some plays against Texas Tech, the entire pregame show was just Bill Belichick propaganda. And I understand they had Nick Saban in there, who's his friend. They had Pat McAfee, who is, I guess he's not connected to Belichick, but he's an ESPN guy, and they're hyping up his debut. Randy Moss was in there, Teddy Bruschi. I mean, they had a lot of people that meant a lot to Bill in his career. But talk about TCU. And here's what I love about it, though. TCU took that motivation and they won the game. And Sonny talked about before this ball game, he was like, look, a few years ago when we played Colorado, we got lost in the hype and we didn't compete well. Like, we didn't play well. If you guys are trying to get me on the chat, I'm not seeing that right now. I'm sorry. I'm doing this for the first time, like solo. So I'm figuring some things out, but I'd love to hear from you. And if I can figure out how to get to your thoughts, I will during the show. But they took that motivation. They took the fact that they felt disrespected, that everybody was talking about Bill Belichick, and they went and won the football game. And they won it in dominant fashion. And I loved that in the second half of that ball game, even when things were well in hand, the defense is still flying around. Marcus Deal's jumping on a fumble. It didn't end up being called a fumble, but he's jumping on the ball. Backup players are coming in and being physical and bringing the wood, right? In the fourth quarter late, Ken Seals is out there throwing a block. Nate Palmer's sticking his face mask into a corner's chest and running him over for a first down on 4th and 4. And it doesn't mean anything, but that's the type of intensity they brought to the table. After a horrible drive early in the fourth, where they milked no time off the clock and just gave the ball back right to North Carolina, the defense forces a turnover. Josh Hoover goes down and scores one more time. This team was intense and they were in control. It was that perfect balance of, okay, you feel disrespected, go do something about it. And don't let your emotions get the best of you and go out there and get so hyped up that you can't compete and you can't execute, but go out there and make plays and show everybody who you are and what you want to do. Sonny Dykes did that tonight. Somebody asked me on Twitter, they were like, why is Josh Hoover still out there? And to be fair, yeah, Josh, it looked like maybe he tweaked an ankle or tweaked a foot. Well, he was fine. He did a post-game interview with Holly Rowe. They have bye week. I think it'll be okay. But there was an injury risk there late in the game when they're up. I guess at that point it was 41-14. But he throws a touchdown pass to DJ Rogers. And you know what? I liked it. because not that I'm for running up the score, even though I feel like in today's college football, when everybody's getting paid, it's a little bit different. It's kind of like the NFL. Like if you don't like it, stop it. But I just feel like this program and this team, they needed to put a little swagger back into it. Like they needed to go beat somebody handily and show them what's up. They had a chance, standalone game, nation watching. The last few times TCU's been on national stage, just to be real about it, it's been embarrassing. They're on national stage against Georgia in the national title game, they got waxed. They play on a national stage against Colorado and Deion Sanders' debut, they get beat. Last season, a loss to Houston on a Friday night that was not a standalone game, but it was a game a lot of people paid attention to. And suddenly there's questions from the media, like myself being the media too, about is Sonny Dykes the guy? So I liked it tonight. I liked that they were out there competing until the final whistle because I just felt like this team, they needed a win like that. They needed to show somebody that they could go wire to wire and win a football game and let everybody know who TCU is. And I don't know what it's going to look like tomorrow when like Mike Greenberg gets up there on Get Up or First Take. I'm sure they'll talk about, well, Bill Belichick, is he washed up? Is he a fraud? That North Carolina team's not very good. Maybe they'll figure some things out with Max Johnson at quarterback. They have a talent deficit. But TCU handled their business tonight. They walked into that stadium. It was sold out. Michael Jordan was there. Lawrence Taylor was there. The broadcast team is still doing tributes to Bill Belichick. Kavorian Barnes runs for a 75-yard touchdown run on the first play of the second half. TCU gets the ball back. I'm hearing Kirk Herbstreit talk about how tough North Carolina's practices are. He's like, well, in today's football, coaches, they don't like to be tough anymore. They don't tackle much. I'll tell you what, North Carolina in practice, they tackle. While he's saying this, the North Carolina defense is missing tackles. How about we talk about Josh Hoover and the job that he's doing? And they got to that later in the ball game. How about we talk about Sonny Dykes and bouncing back after an embarrassing loss to Houston last year, winning 5 out of their last 6 or 6 out of their last 7, whatever it ended up being, coming back and tough game tonight, like tough preparation spot. You didn't know exactly what you were going to see from a personnel standpoint. You didn't know exactly what you were going to see from a scheme standpoint. And after that first drive, which, my goodness, I was holding my breath after that first touchdown drive from North Carolina. But after that first drive, they figured it out. Like they got it done. They handled their business after that. And they looked like a veteran team that had a quarterback going into year 3, that had a lot of pieces returning from the defense. And you know what? I thought at the start of that game, when they gave up that first touchdown drive, and then they go, it wasn't a 3 and out because they had a first down on the first play. But then they, the offense sputters quickly after that, and they have to punt. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Why in year 4 can we still not figure out how to start a season and start a game properly, right? Because even going back to that first year, the Sonny Dykes era against Colorado, you have a 7-6 lead at halftime. Darius Davis, the punt return touchdown, that was the only touchdown for the Frogs in the first half. Last year against Stanford, kind of scuffled around, eventually figured it out and won the game. Of course, we know what happened against Colorado. But to their credit, I think what I talked about this offseason showed up in a big way in the second quarter and beyond. And that was, this is a team that did not panic. Not everything went their way immediately, right? But they didn't panic. Give up a touchdown, have a bad drive to start your season on offense, get a stop, go score. Josh Hoover hooks up with Jordan Dwyer. Jordan Dwyer, by the way, I'm going to get to individual players here in a minute. My goodness. North Carolina could not cover him. They put a lot of attention on Eric McAllister. They were moving a safety over there, double teaming him. They took him out of the ball game. It didn't matter. Jordan Dwyer showed up. DJ Rogers showed up. Joseph Nanjak I thought he had an okay game. He would probably want that. He had a drop in the middle of the game. They would probably want back a few other plays. But this receiving core, there might have been a little bit of a drop off, but it didn't look like it tonight. They played really well, and they didn't panic, and they settled in, and they end up going into the halftime locker room with a 20-7 lead. They get a stop late. They execute a really good 1-minute drive to get in the field goal range. Kyle Limmerman, hello, I was worried about you this offseason. You come in, you go 2 for 2 tonight. They were manageable field goals, short field goals, sure, but he knocked them in. That was fantastic. That was great to see. So you're up 20-7 at halftime. You come out in the second half. Cade Bennett pulls around, gets to the second level, knocks the linebacker out of the screen. Kavorian Barnes takes it to the house. untouched, 75 yards, touchdown. And then you're off to the races. Defense never let up. In the first half, Bud Clark had a pick six. Bud Clark told me at media days, he was like, look, man, Trey Watson, new safeties coach, first thing he told me when he came to TCU was, we're going to lead the nation in interceptions. That's what he said. Well, good start tonight, right? 3 turnovers, only 1 pick, but 3 turnovers. And that pick was a pick six on a 3rd and 3. I'll have to look at the stats here in a minute. I'll look at the box score. I guess I can do that right now while I'm talking. But really good job by the defense on 3rd down tonight. I mean, after that first drive where they looked like they were totally on their heels, they did a great job getting off the field. And that was a 3rd and 3, I believe, where Bud just stepped in front of the pass, picked it off, took it to the house, touchdown, 17-7. And that was after a red zone turnover by TCU, where Josh tried to float it up to Kavorian Barnes on a screen. He tips it up in the air. Maybe that was Bailey. Was that Bailey or Barnes? I can't remember. But he floats it up in the air to somebody. They tip the ball up in the air. North Carolina picks it off. But TCU immediately negates it by getting a pick of their own and taking it to the house. And then they go down and get a stop again. They go and score before halftime and then score right at the beginning of the second half. It was a masterclass of just how to put a team out of the football game. Devin Deal with a scoop and score for a touchdown. Just awesome all around. So let's talk about individual players. Like who stood out tonight? And first off, I think, and I'll start with myself, but I read a lot of TCU message boards over the offseason. I was watching on Twitter. I'll just talk about myself. I personally was confused when I started to hear the buzz about Kavorian Barnes as a starting running back. I was like, what is going on? I thought it was going to be Nate Palmer. I thought it was going to be maybe Jeremy Payne. Barnes had a rough year at UTSA last year. At a group of 5 school, he lost his spot to a couple young running backs. I talked with Javi Cardenas from the Rivals website at UTSA. I was like, tell me the story about this guy. He said, well, he's a great dude. He was kind of banged up last season, and then some young players took over, and he lost his spot. But I still didn't understand why he was stepping in as a starter, because when he signed, my thought was, well, okay, this is a depth guy. Maybe a short yardage back because of his size and his frame. Maybe just a change of pace player, but I don't expect him to be the dude that, carries the load offensively each and every week. Well, he was great tonight. I mean, that 75-yard run really helps your stat line, but 11 carries for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. That was that big 75-yard touchdown run. But more than that, more than the box score in the number of yards he had, he brings a physicality to the running game that this team desperately needs. Because yes, last year the offensive line was an issue, but another issue was Cam Cook would just sort of tiptoe at times. Like he didn't hit the hole with conviction. He didn't have great vision. And you immediately saw when Barnes got the ball, he was looking to hit people. He was not afraid to stick his head down and run over somebody, or just stick his foot in the ground and get north and south and get some tough yards. And I think, by the way, you saw that trickle down to the other backs. Like I said, Nate Palmer late in this football game, a 4th and 4. You're up by 34 points. It doesn't matter, really. Well, it mattered to him. Some defensive back tried to meet him at the line of scrimmage, and he just put his head down and kept churning his legs, and the offensive line helped him out, and they push him through for a first down. John Denman got some carries late in this game. And I thought he ran with some moxie and some conviction and some physicality. I felt like Jeremy Payne did it. So the running back room as a whole, I believe, brought more of that to the table. But Barnes specifically, he led the charge with it. And I saw almost immediately, I was like, okay, I get it. I understand why this guy turned heads in camp and in spring camp and in fall camp. I understand why the coaching staff likes him. He's just got that that physical nature that you want to see from your lead back. So that was great to see. Jordan Dwyer, 9 catches, 136 yards, 1 touchdown. Had the long touchdown catch to open the scoring on the year for TCU. Had a tough catch on like a scramble drill where a defensive back was draped all over him, and he just sort of found half a second of daylight and snatched the ball out of the air. Was good on those stop routes at breaking down, catching the ball, turning upfield, making somebody miss. He just did some really nice things tonight. And Eric McAllister got a lot of attention. His line, was pretty pedestrian at the end of the day. 3 catches for 20 yards, I believe. Yeah, 3 catches for 20 yards. But they were shading a safety over there. They were showing him a lot of attention. And Jordan Dwyer stepped up. So did DJ Rogers. The tight end position last year was non-existent. All due respect to Drake Dabney, he just wasn't a factor. 5 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. That was that late touchdown that Josh Hoover had to him. Joseph Manjack had 2 catches for 24 yards. He had 1 drop that I feel like he would want back. Chase Curtis had a really tough catch over the middle where he got lit up, and they ended up – I was kind of confused on the call there. They ended up calling it a catch and a fumble that he recovered, but he found a way to hold on to the ball when he got just smacked in the head going over the middle. But that was great to see. Just in general, Jordan Dwyer showing up and being a force. And I didn't really feel like the passing game took much of a hiccup. Like, it looked pretty similar to last year in a lot of ways. TCU ran for 258 yards tonight. Isn't it beautiful to say, man? Nate Palmer ended up with 7 rushes for 61 yards, Barnes with 113. Josh Hoover had a 3-yard run, a little scramble. I'll say this about Josh, and I'm going to talk about his entire game in a minute. But he wasn't sprinting out there tonight, and we talked a lot, leading up to this ball game about the need for him to be more of a factor in the run game. What I like that he did with his legs, though, get out of the pocket, keep your eyes downfield, make plays off schedule. We saw that multiple times tonight. And in the first half, on some of those scramble drills, he missed a few guys. Like, he missed a wide open Barnes that would have been a touchdown, would have made it 14-7. They ended up settling for a field goal, and it was 10-7. And I think he maybe missed a wide open Jordan Bailey on like a wheel route, but he had some pressure on him, and he kept his feet alive, though, and he got outside the pocket, and he found Dwyer underneath for a 4-yard gain. So he did some good things with his legs. He's not a burner. He's not somebody who's going to suddenly like take off on his own read, but he can keep the play alive and get outside the pocket and make plays in the passing game. And that in itself is a big plus. But his final line, 27-36, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was super impressive. And he just looked in control tonight. Harrison Graham, friend of mine who covers the Bears for Chat Sports, he mentioned in the first half, he was doing a lot of things pre-snap, and he just looked like he was in control. And I think that's the best way to put Josh Hoover's game tonight. It wasn't, and he was good. It wasn't like spectacular. It's not something you're going to, see as like a top 10 performance in the nation in week 1, but he just took what the defense gave him. He was very efficient. He made good throws. He made things happen. He was in control. He made the right reads. The one interception, I didn't love that play call in the situation. He threw the ball high. It got tipped in the air. But to me, it wasn't like an ill-advised throw. It was not a good throw, but it wasn't like he made a horrible decision in the moment. There was also a play in the first half that they had set up. I don't know if they'd call it a screen, but it was like sort of a setup delay. Jeremy Payne slipped out of the backfield and got open, and he just airmailed it. But if he dumps it down to him, it looked like Payne had room to work. So I hope that they come back to that later on in the season. Okay, so that's the offense. Let's talk about the defense for a second. Bud Clark with a pick 6 for a touchdown. Devin Deal with a scoop and score for a touchdown. They end up with only 2 sacks tonight, but it felt like they had Gio Lopez running for his life all night long. Marcus Deal was incredible tonight. The box score might not show it, but he was really good. They played a lot of guys. I saw Caden McFadden back there at safety, Kylan Jackson back there at safety. By the way, at corner, you had Vernon Glover, Channing Canada, Avery Helm rotated in there. A lot of guys getting playing time, and they did a great job tonight. I mean, they were locked down in the back end of that defense. Lopez was 4 of 10 for 69 yards. The majority of those yards were on the first drive. Max Johnson was good. He was 9 of 11 for 103 yards. Maybe that's going to be their starting quarterback moving forward. But, I mean, they didn't really give up big plays. They frustrated North Carolina all night. They ran for 50 yards tonight. 50 yards. Jordan Shipp, who's their main receiver, he ended up with 84 yards receiving, but half of that was on one play, and that was I think, late third quarter pass from Max Johnson. There weren't, like, the first drive, I don't know what it was. They looked really lost. I'm not sure if it was just as simple as, hey, we needed to see what they were doing before we could really adjust and get in a place where we could play well. But they looked lost. I mean, there were guys running free. They were running for like 8 yards a carry. But then after that, they settled in and played extremely well. And I think you saw tonight, one, you just saw physicality across the board. You saw physicality from this football team, which is good to see because, midway through last year, I was starting to question. I was like, man, is this going to be the Achilles heel? Yeah, that's it. Sorry. There's only Dr. Pepper in this cup, I promise. For a Sonny Dykes-led team. Like, is one of the things that he's just going to struggle with. His teams are going to struggle with the program, that they're not going to be physical at the point of attack. And tonight they were. I mean, on both sides of the ball, I thought they won the battle in the trenches, which is big news. But they brought physicality on defense. They were throwing some stunts out there, twisting some defensive linemen around, bringing blitzes from different places. They really loaded up the box, after that first drive and slowed down the run game well and forced Lopez to make plays through the air, and he just couldn't do it. They looked like, a team that's in year 2 of a system with a good defensive coordinator who's making plays. I hate the schedule. I wish they played again this week. I wish they played Abilene Christian on Saturday. I know it'd be such a tough turnaround, but I wish they played Abilene Christian on Saturday and then you get a couple weeks to get ready for SMU. But that's not the case. We got a bye week. And I wonder how AP voters are going to handle that, because the way they handled their business tonight, I feel like they should be getting some votes for the top 25, but they're not going to play next week. So I don't know how that's going to work. But my big takeaways from today: I don't think North Carolina is very good, but I don't want that to discourage you from being excited about this TCU team, because this was a 48-14 victory. And just to be honest about it, it was not as close as the score indicated. Like, it was a beatdown. They took North Carolina to the woodshed tonight and had no trouble with Bill Belichick. Sonny Dykes is 1-0 against Bill Belichick. That's just a funny stat that we can throw around all the time now. But they looked significantly better than UNC, and they didn't allow that to affect their intensity. You know what I mean? Like, you could tell early in the third quarter, this was about to get away from the Tar Heels and become a laugher. And you did not see a TCU team that said, okay, let's pack it in. I mean, they were still bringing pressure. They were still playing physical on defense. They still had Josh Hoover out there midway through the fourth quarter trying to lead a touchdown drive. They had a bad drive offensively early in the fourth where they didn't take any time off the clock and they didn't score or get any first downs. And they went and made plays. And the big questions we had, I mean, it's week 1. There's a lot of football left to be played. But the things that we were like all off season, we said, you got to be better running the ball. You got to run the ball better. They did. They ran the ball for 260 yards tonight. Kavorian Barnes looks like a great addition to this roster. Cade Bennett sprung Barnes for that long 75-yard touchdown run by pulling around and knocking somebody out at the second level. Remington Strickland, Carson Bruno at the other guard spot looked good. I mean, did Hoover get sacked tonight? I don't think he did. They kept Josh clean in the passing game all night long. Yeah, they didn't allow a sack. The offensive line played really well. Defensively, they stopped the run after that first drive, and they played really well. There was one shanked punt, but special teams, your kicker was 2 of 2. You had good kickoff coverage. There was attention to detail by this TCU team, and honestly, that's been lacking the last few years. And I said I thought they could do it with the veteran leadership they have on this roster, and they did tonight. And I love that Sonny said after the game, like, look, we felt disrespected. We felt like everybody was talking about Bill. Nobody was talking about us. And we came in there and handled our business. Sonny after the game, this is from Steven Johnson, who's live on the scene in North Carolina. So he's proud of their team, felt like they played hard, and was impressed with how they responded after UNC's opening drive. So they've come a long way at the running back position. He praised Kavorian Barnes, Jeremy Payne, and Trent Battle. Yeah, Trent Battle had a touchdown run where they pulled a couple guards and he just got up there. Physically, they just looked better. I mean, a lot of, a good chunk of those rushing yards were on that long touchdown run, but they didn't get thrown backwards many times. I mean, there were some 2-yard runs, 1-yard run, but overall they were getting good yardage on first and second down. Dyke said TCU felt disrespected a bit. There's a lot of conversation about the game. Much of it didn't involve TCU. That provided motivation. Heck yeah. Go do it. Go handle your business and make people pay for what they said. 3 of the 4, they did a pregame pick 'em, as they always do. And Pat McAfee, Nick Saban, Teddy Bruschi, I believe, all picked UNC. Desmond Howard picked TCU. Shout out to Des. And, Nick was like, he gave this whole spiel about how it's going to be tough because they all these new players and blah, blah, but I can't pick against one of my best friends. Okay. Well, you should have, Nick, because they didn't play well tonight. One thing I like about Sonny, and I guess I can't, think of all the examples right now, but it feels like he learns from mistakes. When they were in a crisis last year in the middle of the season, and he talked about how they needed to figure out how to run the ball and play complementary football. Well, it wasn't perfect, but they figured it out. Savion Williams is not a deal that you had to go to one of your wide receivers to run a wildcat formation. But that's what they did, and it worked. Josh Hoover stopped turning the ball over. They started playing better football, and they won games. He said a lot this offseason. 2 years ago, we got caught up in the hype with Dion. We weren't prepared for that game to be close. We weren't prepared for it to be tough, and we melted under the pressure. What do they do tonight? They go out there and they ball, man. They played well. They played with intensity. They took that motivation and they said, you know what? Let's go get it done. I am excited about this football team. I understand North Carolina is bad. But on a national stage, and I'm not naive, I don't think that tomorrow everybody's going to lead with how good TCU is. I imagine they'll talk about Bill Belichick and is he a fraud and is he distracted by his girlfriend who's 24 years old and has he lost his fastball and can anyone win at UNC? But the story of tonight, don't get this twisted. The story of this Labor Day game is that the TCU Horned Frogs are back in business. They went on a national stage on the road in front of a sellout, and Michael Jordan sat there and watched Josh Hoover ball out. Lawrence Taylor sat there and watched the TCU defense bring the heat. He saw Devin Deal coming off the edge and making plays. That's the story of tonight. They're 1-0. You go on the road, you win a game like that. That's awesome. I thought it was going to be a hard-fought football game. I felt like they were going to be in it, wire to wire. But it wasn't like that. They handled their business. Thank you for tuning in to the live post-game show. This is the Frog Factor podcast. I don't have a lot of details for you right now. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. I'll have a video talking about this win, Jerry Meyer, 2027 quarterback who committed to TCU, and we'll do a preview of the ACU game, and I'll have more information about what this is going to look like moving forward. But let me say, I love you guys, truly, because I lost my gig at Locked On unexpectedly, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. People showed up over the weekend when I said, hey, I'm going to do this post-game show. People subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Go Frogs, 1-0. Big win over North Carolina tonight.